Hello, Internet. Welcome to another Wednesday serial. This time, I am not necessarily or even going to be talking comics. I am talking about an old friend of the show. Whether or not that is mutually reciprocated, I'm not sure. James Donnelly posted a video today, the first time he has in a good long while. So first off, it was good to see him again, though it looks like he's aged about a decade in a year, which was concerning. I think it's just the beard. It's completely gray. The last time I saw him, he didn't have one, uh, which was basically 2 years ago. Um, if you're unfamiliar, used to do the show on his channel, James Donnelly. Very bold, just being right out there. Uh, he would do this thing called the Shadow Gallery, primarily focused on Batman, but would talk about other comics while he's sitting there in a poorly lit room smoking a cigarette most of the time. Very unique personality and a very unique take. And that was kind of the big thing that I liked about what he was doing and why I took issue with what he said today, which was basically why he left YouTube, why he doesn't want to return. And a lot of it comes down to a few things. A, he felt like a lot of people are doing basically what he was doing, i.e., reviews of comics, movies, and eventually wrestling, better than him, which, fair enough. And he didn't feel like he had anything unique to say, uh, largely due to the fact that he's a white cis male, which, okay. Um, I guess I take issue with that part of it, though in a way that belies some of what he says, but agrees with a great deal of what he says. So I wanted to dive into that topic. If you don't care, click off now. So basically, he's saying that he wants to create space for other reviewers who, um, are of different viewpoints, which fair enough. And he does take time to say, like, if you are knit, uh, he's not trying to shout at you or say stand down or anything like that. He's just saying he's choosing to do what he's choosing to do, which fair enough. If it was my choice, I'd lock him in a basement and force him to do a video every day because I think he has a unique way of going about things. It is often windy and takes a long time to get to the point in some ways, but that's because he's bringing in so much information and thought to anything he ultimately lands on that it's great. Often his videos were not prepared. They were 3 hour diatribes based on stuff he had just read or processed in one way or another, relating to other things he had read or processed, usually recently, or memories were conjured based on what was at hand, which was another reason why his stuff was so great. So much of what I hear now or what I read now, especially some of the more academic, more processed videos, are so on the point. They don't allow the imagination to wander or allow these points that are tangentially connected or connected through an experience that James had, and that's the only real hinge point, um, brought forward to the discussion. So, what a big part of what I found about the Shadow Gallery being so great is that it took comics and then it related it to things out of comics or to other comics in other ways that were just unique and interesting because it was just through what was ever in his head. And there's actually shockingly few people who really dive in and do that regularly in a way that I find elucidating and engaging. And that was one thing that just kept me bring me back to James's stuff is that it felt like comics were bigger than the comics themselves, and so many people are so worried about wringing their hands over the minutia or the history of the comic itself only in the light of itself and only judging comics in relation to what they feel are apt comparisons, rather than taking in a wider whole, that really inspired me to do more of the same, I believe. Though I think I was kind of on that track already. I don't know. I found it compelling how much it changed or affected me. I don't know. I ingested enough of it, so had to have some effect on me. So I guess that's where I take issue. Again, if James doesn't want to create content, that's his prerogative. That's fine. That's great. I'm certainly creating less YouTube videos. And that's one thing I'd say to James too. Like, as much as I did watch a lot of James Donnelly stuff, I never really watched it. I turned it on and listened to it in the background. It was, in effect, a podcast played through YouTube, which, yeah, man, the way you do stuff. And he makes a point, like, I don't have a green screen. I don't have a green screen. Guess I could do an orange screen. Um, we're not so committed to the YouTube thing that we're not doing the whole thing. And he's comparing himself to Lindsay Ellis in this video, which I think is a poor comparison that isn't helping James at all here. In his process of thinking through it. So if you're unfamiliar, Lindsay Ellis, formerly the Nostalgia Chick, is a personality and has been a personality online and frankly otherwise for years. She's not a celebrity per se, but she's a known quantity. I mean, she's a low-level celebrity. She's not like an A-list actor, but she's a celebrity. And the pressures and concerns that she had when she did or did not misspeak, I would argue she didn't misspeak and she was making valid points and people jumped on her for insane reasons, happened. That's not anything like what would happen to James or I, because we are not in a public light. And that's the thing, is our voices, our videos are only going to a community. This video, if I'm lucky, will be seen by more than 30 people. James at this point would do well to get those numbers at the same time. We're not talking to the public. We're talking to a handful of close followers who are interested in our opinions. This is effectively an e-letter to friends, which is how I've treated my videos forever. And I only ever made the mistake of treating it so when I called out someone in Comicsgate for something, and then that became bigger. Not that big, though, but the framing was wrong. So I think that's interesting. What I also think through this is that James wants to make space for other creators, which is all well and fine, but silence does nothing. It's inactive. It's lazy. If you want to help other creators and help other voices, you kind of have to point to them. You have to highlight them. You have to use what you do know to push for them. And sometimes the push isn't even so much to other people and expanding their network, though that is important. It is to reach out to them and let them know that you find what they're doing is valuable. And I think that's something that's been lost in YouTube overall. And I think it's one of the biggest losses on the platform versus what I remember from way back when in my adult Alzheimer-ish memory fugue, is that there used to be response videos and it would like highlight a top response or maybe a few response videos, depending on the era, to those videos. And so there's more of a conversation, there's more community, and there is more YouTube within YouTube. YouTube now is a corporate thing, mostly pushing late night talk show videos for celebrities or something. It used to be a community platform. And I frankly think a lot of what James is seeing and responding to is how this platform has changed through the years versus when he started, which was pretty tight to when I started All Things Considered, if memory serves. Again, the fugue. I really think James has a lot to say and has said a lot of it in the past. Um, and that was the thing. Like I watched or in took in a lot of James's videos. They were like fucking 3 hours, man. Like, yeah, no, I skipped some of them because they were 3 hours. I That's longer than a feature film of you going off on like maybe a handful of Batman comics. Yeah, I some weeks I just wasn't there. And you know, there's no reason to be critiquing his stuff now. I'm just saying I think there's value, but I think there's also a value in if James thinks that these other people needs more representation to maybe take some time, make some shorter videos. They don't have to have a ton of production quality, but I think some forethought and a little bit of planning to cut the runtime by 80% would help in that way. But in much the way he left this video today, which is 15 minutes, which I think mine's actually going to be longer now, um, you know, great. Do that. Have a thought, have something to say, let your windiness come through, be done. And, or not. I mean, again, I'm not trying to push him to make videos. I'm really trying to say, I think there are other people who have something to say. And just because they're white, cis male, doesn't mean that their opinion, their value is not creating any diversity whatsoever. Because there's also diversity of thought. There's also diversity of opinions, of objectives, of exposure to things. I know I've talked with women before about Wonder Woman comics and kind of related it to certain parts of feminist theory that they weren't aware of at the time and help them connect it. I'm just saying, like, there's education and understanding beyond just the meat frame that you've been plugged into this world with. And that's part of the importance of diversity, is that we're hearing from everyone, but we should not be tearing ourselves down to lift each other up. We should just be lifting each other up. And that's, I guess, the core of what got me today when James was saying what he was saying. And I wanted to push against it in a way, and also hopefully free him to not shackle himself by racial constraints when the 20 people listening to him care more about what he has to say than what he looks like. And we always have. Because, I mean, I knew he was a white dude, but, like, I didn't really know what he looked like forever because he was filming in the dead of night, basically. There's the light of the cigar, and that was it. I didn't really know what he looked like. And now that he looks like now, or I know what he looks like now, not doing much for me. I don't care what you look like. I care about what you thought and what you had to say. And I think that's important. And also maybe the importance of the medium of going to podcasting might help, because then that can go away. Though podcasts are essentially what, two white dudes talking in a room to each other. So I don't know. I just wish we could help each other without having to think that putting ourselves down is helping. And to that end, I've tried to uplift and listen and talk to a number of people of different frames and perspectives, and a lot of them have left. And so, there's more out there, and I'm always seeking and hearing more, but we have to remember too, comics were for a long time advertised to young boys and exclusively boys. And that's why it's harder to find female voices, because comics weren't made for them for years. And you'll find, women who enjoyed some comics through time, despite the stuff it wasn't necessarily made for them. They tend to be more tomboyish. just stands to reason. And we're moving past that. And we have been moving past that for years. And I feel like we've made exponential growth year to year to year. And I hope we continue to do so up until a point where it breaks, where there's just enough mix that it can't be exponential growth anymore. That's the goal. But until we get there, I think having voices out there fighting for it and pushing for better things through intelligent discussion is a help, not a harm. So, cheers to that. Cheers to you recognizing that a lot of the stuff that was happening around the Lindsay Ellis situation was just garbo, social media fluff, unimportant, not really worth considering, but understanding the weight of it. I think that's an important thing that a lot of us are struggling to deal with. I know how I've dealt with and interacted with social media has changed a lot through even the last year. And I know a lot of other people have as well. I think how we view the information we give out about ourselves is becoming more of a concern. And as we deal with all this, we also kind of need social media because I don't know about a number of you, but it's one of my few outlets to the outside world anymore because I live and work here. So it's a lot to take in, it's a lot to process, and it was bittersweet to hear a voice that I hadn't heard in a long time and was excited to hear basically saying, I want to shut up. So I said I was going to end this video 5 times now. I think I should finally do that. Cheers.